Welcome back to Grimverse History, where we uncover the strange and forgotten sides of history. Tonight we enter a French royal chamber, where beauty once ruled. It is the story of a crownless French queen whose power faded as her body failed. She was not dying in battle, nor from plague. She was rotting quietly while still breathing, and everyone around her could smell it. You are standing outside a locked wooden door. Incense burns, but the air feels wrong. Guards avert their eyes as servants pass quickly. Inside, a woman once adored is being avoided. If stories like this unsettle your sense of history, gently like the video and subscribe to the channel. And let us know where you're watching from tonight, because this story crossed 6 centuries to reach you. Now, dim the lights and slow your breathing. Let the modern world recede behind you. Imagine stone walls holding heat and silence. It is winter France, the year 1450. Childbirth is over, but recovery never comes. What follows is not murder, not mercy, but a system watching a woman disappear. In the French court, beauty does not decorate power, it replaces it. Agnès Sorel stands close to the throne without standing on law. She holds no title that survives ink and parchment. No bloodline secures her position when rooms fall silent. Her authority lives entirely on the surface of her body. You can almost hear the logic working quietly. If she remains beautiful, she remains believable. If she remains desirable, she remains untouchable. That is not romance, but administration. Her skin functions like a contract renewed every morning. Her posture replaces legal documents she never receives. Her smile smooths political tension better than seals and wax. As long as the image holds, the protection holds. This is not cruelty yet. This is efficiency. Wearing perfume, in a court obsessed with lineage. She offers something faster, immediate access, immediate influence, immediate reassurance. Beauty becomes a shortcut through institutional doors. Everyone knows it, nobody writes it down, and because nothing is written, nothing can be defended. Eyes follow. Calculations follow faster. Admiration never arrives alone in places like this. It always brings inventory. Her body is assessed like a border, clear, stable, uncontested. For now the problem begins when the border leaks. A pallor appears that fabric cannot correct. A fatigue settles that posture cannot dismiss. The surface shows hairline fractures, and suddenly, beauty stops being invisible. That is, when protection quietly expires. No announcement follows. No accusation arrives. The court simply adjusts its distance. Conversations shorten. Glances soften into avoidance. Silence replaces touch with impressive discipline. You notice how quickly affection learns new habits, and the moment it deteriorates, the lease ends. No one asks what happened to her health, they ask what happened to her value. This is where admiration reveals its fine print. A woman without rank is allowed to exist conditionally, conditioned on symmetry, brightness, intactness. Once the condition fails, so does her relevance. You feel the room grow cooler without windows opening. Heat remains, but warmth withdraws. People still enter, but fewer linger. The body that once secured safety now creates risk, and risk in courts like this is managed quietly. Here comes the dry truth. History rarely dramatizes. She is not punished for sickness. She is abandoned for inconvenience. Beauty never promised loyalty, it only promised access. The human value arrives later, if at all. You sit with this realization longer than expected, not because it shocks, but because it feels familiar. Systems still reward surfaces before substance. They just use better lighting now. The humane thought settles gently at the end. A person should not require perfection to deserve care. Yet history shows how often they did. In the medieval court, sickness never arrives alone. It always brings interpretation with it. A woman grows pale, and the room grows suspicious. Her strength fades, and meaning rushes in to replace it. No one asks what hurts inside her body. They ask what failed inside her character. You stand close enough to notice the shift. Voices soften, but not with care. They soften with caution. In that world, illness is not a condition. It is a message waiting to be decoded. A lingering weakness suggests imbalance. An unexplained scent suggests corruption. Postpartum exhaustion suggests something worse. The body sprinks and society translates badly. You watch the translation happen in real time. There is no vocabulary for infection as accident. There is only purity, deviation, and consequence. When medicine lacks tools, morality fills the gap. The woman's body becomes a public document. Skin, breath, posture, appetite, every detail is read like marginal notes. Not for healing, but for judgment. It is never written kindly. A smell is not just unpleasant. It becomes evidence. Evidence of disorder, excess, indulgence, or punishment. The senses stand in for diagnosis. You notice how fast this becomes efficient. If the body smells wrong, the soul must be wrong. If the soul is wrong, care becomes optional. This logic saves time and responsibility. Compassion is slower than accusation. You hear incense burning more often now. Not to comfort her, but to manage the air. The room smells like resin and avoidance. Here comes the quiet escalation. Once illness turns moral, recovery turns suspicious. Improvement feels undeserved. Suffering feels explanatory. A woman in pain becomes a lesson. A woman who does not recover becomes a warning. You see how useful that is. The court does not need proof. It needs coherence. A story where weakness has a reason and moral failure is always convenient. The body is no longer private. It belongs to interpretation, to whispers, glances, and lowered voices. You realize no one is cruel on purpose. They are correct on principle. That is what makes it dangerous. When illness is framed as fault, help feels like endorsement. Better to distance, better to observe, better to let meaning do the work. Care withdraws without announcement. You feel the temperature change again, not from winter, but from belief. This is not about medicine yet. This is about narrative control. A system that cannot explain infection invents judgment. A culture that fears disorder assigns blame. The body carries it quietly. Here is the dry truth. History leaves behind. Sickness did not condemn her. Interpretation did. You sit with that longer than expected because it feels uncomfortably familiar. Even now, people still moralize pain. They just use better language. The humane thought settles softly at the end. Illness does not require meaning to be real, and suffering does not ask permission to exist. Medicine enters the room with confidence, not curiosity. It carries rules, not questions. You hear metal touch porcelain in shallow bowls. The sound is careful, practiced, almost polite. This is what help sounds like in the 15th century. The body lies still, already exhausted. The theory arrives fully awake. Doctors believe illness means excess, too much heat, too much blood, too much imbalance. The solution feels obvious to them. Remove until balance returns. You watch the first bowl fill slowly. Blood leaves the body as proof of effort, not of understanding, but of obedience. The color deepens and the room feels productive. Doing something always looks like progress. When weakness follows, no one pauses. They adjust the method, not the assumption. If bleeding fails, cleanse harder. If cleansing fails, purge deeper. Procedure becomes momentum. You notice how the language stays calm. Nothing here sounds violent when spoken correctly. Words like correction, release, and balance soften everything. The body does not argue. Heat builds in the chamber as fires rise. Windows stay closed to protect the theory. Air thickens, sweat settles, breath grows shallow. You stand near enough to feel it. When the patient weakens, doctrine feels validated. Collapse looks like proof that corruption remains. So more must be removed. This logic never ends on its own. Mercury enters quietly, introduced as a cleanser, a bright promise, disguised as discipline. It burns slowly, invisibly, with commitment. You smell something sharp beneath incense now. The treatments repeat because they are correct. Correct according to books, diagrams, and senior voices. Stopping would suggest doubt. Doubt has no place near royalty. You see how responsibility dissolves into ritual. Each physician acts in good faith. Each one follows accepted knowledge. And each one accelerates the collapse. Intentions remain clean, while outcomes rot. Here comes the dry truth. Nobody writes down. The system rewards consistency over awareness. Deviation looks dangerous. Protocol feels safer than observation. You watch care turn mechanical without cruelty. When the body reacts badly, the answer escalates. More blood removed, more fluids restricted. The body is treated like a stubborn equation. You notice how pain becomes background noise. Numbers and methods take the foreground. The person fades behind the process. Efficiency replaces listening. This is not ignorance alone. It is certainty refusing interruption. Doctrine does not adjust for individuals. It only repeats itself louder. You feel the chill settle despite the heat, not from winter, but from inevitability. Here is the humane thought that lingers softly. Knowledge without humility becomes dangerous quickly. Care requires attention, not just procedure. History reminds us gently without accusation. Doing something is not the same as helping. No blade appears in this room. No cup is slipped across a table. The chamber stays orderly, almost reassuring. Candles burn evenly. Rituals continue on schedule. Nothing here looks like violence at first glance. You stand quietly near the wall, close enough to hear breathing slow, far enough to feel absolved. This death does not arrive with intent. It arrives with procedure. Each person involved performs their role correctly. The physician follows doctrine without deviation. The attendants follow orders without question. The court follows silence like a rule of law. No one acts alone. That is the point. When treatment fails, it does not stop. Stopping would imply error. Error implies responsibility. So the system keeps moving. You watch decisions pass from hand to hand. Each touch lightens the weight of consequence. By the time it reaches the end, no one remembers where it began. Mistakes dissolve beautifully when shared. A doctor bleeds because the book demands it. Another purges because weakness persists. A clerk records outcomes with careful neutrality. The ledger stays clean. You notice how safety hides inside obedience. If everyone follows the rules, no one is guilty. The system becomes a shelter from accountability. It hums softly, efficiently. There is no emergency declared, only escalade disguised as diligence. More intervention, less reflection. The body becomes collateral to consistency. You feel the air thicken again. Not from incense this time, but from inevitability. This is how organized harm works. Not loud, not cruel, not rushed, just uninterrupted. No one needs her gone explicitly. They only need the process to continue, and it does. You realize how dangerous certainty becomes when belief outranks observation, when ritual replaces response. Here comes the dry fact that chills quietly. The system never intends to kill her. It simply refuses to stop. In that refusal, damage accumulates legally. You hear footsteps outside the chamber, soft, unhurried, already moving forward. The world prepares its next arrangement. This death leaves no fingerprints. When the end comes, it feels administrative. Breathing slows, pauses, corrects incorrectly. Someone notes the time. Someone closes the door. The process completes itself. You remain standing there longer than expected because nothing dramatic explains the outcome. Only alignment, a linear between fear, obedience, and power. Here is the human value that settles last. Systems do not require malice to destroy. They only need silence and momentum. Death does not end her usefulness. It only changes the paperwork. You feel the air cool as the room empties. Breathing stops. Candles continue. Silence reorganizes itself. What lies still on the bed is no longer a woman. It is a question that refuses to disappear in this world. Bodies do not rest easily while alive. Her body is supervised, measured by distance, touch, permission. Who may enter, who may speak, who may approach. Every inch is managed with quiet precision. Control never announces itself loudly. When she dies, that control does not release. It tightens. The door closes, then opens again later. Not for mourning, but for inspection. Hands return, not with tenderness, but with purpose. You stand beside the threshold and notice something strange. No one asks who she was, they ask what she proves. A body becomes evidence when power feels uncertain. She is examined, discussed, doubted, not because anyone misses her, but because someone fears what her death implies. Death should end relevance here. It extends it. You hear tools placed carefully on stone. Metal sounds softer when framed. As inquiry, the gestures are clean, respectful, detached. Detachment is always polite. Centuries later, it happens again. The ground opens, carefully, professionally. Bones emerge, without ceremony. You feel time fold inward, quietly. She is lifted not as a person, but as unresolved. A case that history forgot to file properly. The question survives longer than the woman. Her remains travel through laboratories and reports. Numbers replace names. Findings replace memory. She is still being used. This is the escalation history rarely admits. A woman denied rest becomes a resource. Her silence is interpreted, repeated. No cruelty is required here. Only curiosity mixed with authority. The same authority that once controlled her presence now controls her absence. Ownership does not expire with life. You hear pages turning somewhere far away. Ink dries. Conclusions form. Debates reopen. Her body continues to participate without consent. That is the quiet horror. Never allowed to be simply gone. Her existence remains conditional even after death. A closed coffin would end discussion, so it stays open, figuratively, forever. You sit with this longer than expected, because it feels uncomfortably modern. Even now some bodies are archived instead of mourned, examined instead of remembered, kept open because power prefers option. Here is the human value that settles gently. A person deserves rest beyond usefulness. Carnage, not erasure. It is dignity returning late. The room grows quieter now. The candles shorten, not the shadows. Breathing slows and the story loosens its grip. Somewhere behind us a stone corridor cools. Incense lingers faintly in heavy air. Fabric brushes against wood as doors. Rest closed. Not sealed in fear anymore. Just resting. You can still sense the place without naming it. The hush of footsteps held back by habit. The warmth that never truly comforts a time when silence carried more authority than voices. Now, gently we step away from that chamber. Not in haste, not in relief. Just with the care used to close an old book. The kind whose pages remember your hands. The past does not follow us out. It stays where it belongs, breathing quietly. What remains is a softer awareness that history is not only dates and names. It is rooms, bodies, pauses, and what was never said. As you return to your own night, let the weight settle lightly. There is nothing you need to resolve. Some stories ask only to be witnessed. If this quiet journey stayed with you, you may gently like the video. If it feels worth sharing, pass it along softly. And if you wish to return again, subscribe and walk with us another night. For now, rest easy. The lights dim themselves. The door closes without a sound. Goodbye, and we will meet again.